Alright, girls, I think we can get started, alright, with our lesson and our new module. So, as I told you in the beginning of the course, this course is organized in 5 different modules, right? And today we start module 2, social emotional learning. What does it mean? And in this module, we are going to start learning more practical things and discuss some everyday classroom situations, looking at those situations through the lenses of social and emotional learning, through the lenses of positive discipline. Okay? Module 2 is going to be divided in 3 lessons. So it's going to be today and 2 other days. Okay? And then we'll carry on with modules 3, 4, and 5. So today's lesson is from educational frameworks to classroom life. We are going to look at some of the documents that regulate education here in Brazil and some documents that are used worldwide and how they are connected to classroom life and our daily struggles and challenges. All right. So when you see this statement here, students have to Maslow before they bloom. What comes to your mind? And if you're not familiar with anything in this sentence, just let me know as well. But what comes to your mind when you see this statement? Just feel free to share your thoughts whenever you are ready.
I wasn't really familiar with Maslow, but I remembered that it was related to some kind of approach in teaching and learning and this relation of education and early childhood, I guess. But I'm not really sure about Bloom because now it's in capital letter, and then I start to imagine that it's also related to educational programs, and so that's it.
All right, thank you, G. So yeah, Maslow is an educational theory. It's in Bloom as well. That's why it's in capital because it's the last name of its developer. Okay, that's why it's Bloom. So we have two main representations of what's expected from a child in school. Okay? And when we say that students have to Maslow before they bloom, and I'm telling you that Bloom's taxonomy, we're going to look at it, is all about cognitive and academic skills. And Maslow's pyramid, we're going to see it, is all about the social and emotional needs and how they should be addressed and met in the classroom. So that's why we say that they have to Maslow before they bloom. We are saying that their emotions should be first addressed. So then we can expect our pupils to excel academically, to succeed in school. Okay, so they should Maslow before they bloom. And let's first look at Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom's pyramid. This is all we put in our lesson plannings, okay? And I teach as well. I put it on my plannings as well. You don't have to run away and rip all of your plannings. But this is what we as teachers usually do. We want our students to, let's start from the bottom, okay? We want them first to remember what we teach, to recall the facts, the basic concepts. We want them to understand what we teach, whether it's a language or a concept of music, an art technique. We want them to understand and explain those ideas and those concepts. We also expect our students to apply what we teach, to use the information in new situations. So if you are a language teacher, you surely expect your students to apply the language you teach in a dialogue when they talk to a native speaker, when they talk to peers, when they travel abroad, and when they could travel abroad, and so on. And when you are teaching art, like Talita, and you want them to apply creating their pieces of art and creating music by using it in new situations. Going to the top, so narrowing this taxonomy, and we expect them and to analyze, draw connections among ideas, to evaluate, make decisions, and finally to create, to produce new and original work. So those things, they are all embedded in our school systems, and they are all embedded in our plannings, in what we expect from our students. And that's okay. We should expect that. We are teachers and we are trained to provide knowledge, to share the language we know, share the concepts we know, and help them grow their minds based on that. But the thing is that when we talk about positive discipline and when we talk about social and emotional learning, we need the students to Maslow before they bloom. They need to Maslow so then they can bloom, okay? And what is Maslow? This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So starting from the bottom, those are the things that we should keep an eye on and we should keep as targets to meet before we expect anything from that other pyramid we've just seen. So first, the physiological needs of our students: food, water, shelter, and sleep. It might sound like those are obvious things, that they are all fed, they all had water and a good night of sleep, but that's not usually the situation. So when we are dealing with students who are struggling academically, this is something we should consider. So food and water needs, sheltering needs, and also sleep. Let's go up. Safety, the emotional and intellectual safety, feeling that I'm safe to make mistakes and to explore with this teacher, to feel that I am safe to express myself and to tell the teacher when I'm upset and when I make a mistake, like yelling at a friend. The teacher does not get all judgmental, but she really tries to understand what's going on with me and helps me balance my own feelings. Feeling safe is a need we need to meet before we expect an academic mastery. Okay? Then we have love and belonging, having friends, belonging to the group, belonging to the classroom. So when we see that that student is always isolated or is new at school, new in town, and we might consider that as a factor that is influencing that student's academic development. Okay, and then going to the top, esteem, having self-esteem, having achievements, recognizing the developmental stages, recognizing their own progression, and at last, self-actualization, achieving one's full potential. So when we see that a student is indeed ready for the full potential. And what is the full potential, you might ask? We get back to blooms. So that is the full potential. Imagine that the Maslow pyramid comes first, is right there in a big bottom, and then we have Bloom's taxonomy. Then we have the cognitive and academic targets. So This was just something to start today's lesson on a discussion of how important it is to meet those needs before we expect improvement, before we expect development academic wise. All right. Now we are going to look at the two of them side by side. So we are still looking at Maslow and Bloom. Okay, remember they should Maslow first and then they Bloom. So when they have their physiological needs met, when they have food and water and shelter and they're sleeping well, those basic needs in life in learning will, for example, let our student remember, because a huge part of our memory as with oh sorry, there's a loud car here. Sorry, girls. So in our first module, when we were learning about the brain, I told you that a huge part of what we learn sticks to the brain, so it sticks to memory, long-term memory, while we sleep. So when we are fed and we had water, we can rest and sleep, and therefore we can learn and remember. So see how they are connected. When you meet or you make sure the physiological needs are being met, you provide the student with the opportunity to biologically learn. Let's go up. For example, the sense of safety and security and stability will also help our student with understanding mechanisms, understanding a routine, understanding a sequence, understanding how classroom agreements work, understanding how a type of society works. Belongingness. So when they feel connected, they feel passionate about the school, about the group, they can analyze and apply the things they are learning very comfortably because they belong there. They are not afraid of making mistakes. They are not afraid of exposing their ideas and applying and trying again and again and again and learning from others as well. Self-esteem. So when we see that our students are developing self-confidence and a sense of achievement, they can evaluate. They feel good enough to evaluate, for example, the artworks of others and have their own artworks and evaluated by others and accept this feedback and give reasonable and respectful feedback to others. And about the top of both pyramids, they are connected by spontaneity, creativity, and morality. So they can create something new when they have achieved their full potential. I brought those two pyramids here just for us to visualize how they are connected. So we have the studies of Maslow about what a person needs for life. And we had the studies of Bloom, another scientist, of what a person needs to succeed not only in a school context but in life. Okay, so can you see how they are connected now? Do you have any questions so far, girls, about Maslow and Bloom?
I'm not sure if you're able to see us. Are you? Yeah.
I can see you, yes?
Yes. Okay. Okay. No, just because sometimes when I teach online, I don't have. I don't know. I don't have a way to see with the students, and then I imagine, no. So maybe is she seeing us? Right. And then we are.
Yeah, but I can
Nodding.
see you. I can see you. And so, any questions so far? About Maslow and Bloom?
No, it's all good.
It's all good? Okay, so I brought you here a case discussion. Okay, this is a real story, and we are going to look at this story thinking about that statement I first showed you, that they have to Maslow before they bloom. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to read the case, and then we are going to discuss it, right? You tell me when we are ready, and then we can start the discussion. Let me know when you are ready.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Everybody want to go first?
Yeah, so
I accept just because I've done this before.
yeah. So first, girls, what I would like you to share is, as a teacher, what do you think is going on with Liam? Okay, so based on your professional background, on your experience, and add it up to what we've just talked about, so Maslow and Bloom, what do you think is really going on with Liam?
Okay. When I said I've done this before, I meant I've done this before to you, okay?
Yeah.
So, all right. What I see here is a disorganization is in this kid's life. So his basic structure um, is not strengthened by any kind of influence. So there's no way this kid is feeling secure about himself, I guess. So maybe understanding that the ones who take care of them are not his parents, are not his parents, may affect him, and seeing that he cannot connect, he doesn't have a chance to connect because he has noticed that every time he connects to somebody, he changes the environment. He has to change. He has his habits. So I think this is the main problem. This is a self-protection mode that this kid might be turning on.
Okay, nicely observed, G. What about you, Talita? What do you think?
Well, pretty much the same. I think that like if we're comparing to Maslow's hierarchy, I think it's the love and belonging, because he doesn't get the attention he needs from his parents, so the love, and because he moves around a lot, he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere. I just wanted to say something that I find interesting is that we sometimes only get half the text. We don't know the background, you know? So just being able to read the first part just makes you have more empathy for the student and go like, oh, I understand better. But sometimes we just get the student misbehaving, and then we don't think like, oh, why is he misbehaving? What's behind this? We just think, oh, he's a bad student, and So I think it's really, really important to know where it comes from.
Yeah. And what I personally do with my misbehaviors is to have an interview with the family or the caregiver. So before taking any action and designing an action plan and calling the coordinator and the headmaster, and I talk to the family. I want to see what's going on and what was going on before that. And we have to be really brave to do that because it's often a family that we don't know, families that we've never talked to before. But we should be brave and we should advocate for that child and call the family, call them for a meeting, and really try to understand what's going on. It's not a meeting to present the problems that are happening because sometimes, most of the times, they already know. Um, but to hear from them, okay, to hear from the parents. And let me just read your question again. So, if you're considered an extracurricular tutor, how should we act? If we as teachers consider like a therapist, is that your question, Ju?
Oh no. If we are considered extracurricular tutors, for example, I am an English teacher for
I see.
toddlers, but I'm not the main
The,
tutor of the
ah,
kids.
mm-hmm. I see
So
what you mean. What I would do now in that case is to talk to the class teacher, so the one that's leading the group most of the time, and ask her to be in this meeting with me. You could have this meeting together because probably the misbehaving happens in both of your lessons. So, with you in the extracurricular program and with her in the regular lessons. So, listening from the family and learning about the past from them would be beneficial for both of you. Okay? So that is what I would do, what I've done before. Okay, so we have identified two main problems. You're welcome, G. And first, as highlighted by Talita, it's really important to know the past, so the previous history, not only looking at the misbehaving, but looking at what was happening before that. So that is point number one. Then we ended up with two big problems. First, that he has a very unstable family routine, and this is out of our control. Of course, we can talk to parents during those meetings about consistency and the importance of a routine, but we actually cannot do anything about it because we are not in the household, we are not controlling their agendas. And then we have another problem. So we have this unstable family background, and we have the big problem of the sense of belongingness. And how could we solve this as teachers, as classroom teachers? What would be your ideas to help Liam have more structure, more predictability, and more and to build this sense of belongingness in your classroom because he's new in your classroom? What would be your ideas?
I think for me, it's really important for students to feel welcome and comfortable in my classroom, especially because art is such a subjective thing, and I don't want them to feel like they're doing anything wrong. I think I don't know if I mentioned that I painted it like a painting right on my wall that says, in art there are no mistakes, only opportunities for creativity, right?
That's amazing.
So I want them to feel like it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay um, to express yourself, but let's try to do it in a healthy way. So I try to, because usually students like that, they want attention. So I give them attention, but I give them attention and try to show them like what is a healthy attention and what is a way to express yourself in a healthy manner.
Wonderful. So providing the Liam with attention, welcoming him to the group, but also showing him the limits and how far your individualized attention could go, right? And any ideas, Giovanna?
I think I would have the same kind of attitude, since a routine of welcoming, maybe circle time with the kids, sharing what happened in the week, right? That always makes them feel where they are, understand what is going on around them, understand that each one is a different individual, right? In my case, I'm able to do this because I'm there every day,
Mhm.
right? So um, I would, yeah, I think I would do that. Try to create a routine with welcoming songs. I don't know. Yes. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, yeah.
Maybe yes, pedagogical approaches. Yes.
Yeah, pedagogical approaches that would cheer him up, that would be also fun. And something that really helped with the real life Liam, because I told you it was a real case, um, it was predictability. So showing him how the routine could be predictable, how the activities could be, minimally predictable at our school was really comforting for him, and always keeping him by my side. So keeping him busy as a special helper, keeping him busy as a tutor or a mentor for another child, giving him some kind of important class job so he could blend in without having to resort to aggression and anxious behavior to get everyone's attention. So, those were strategies that helped with the real Liam. Of course, it takes time, but they helped. Okay. And also the meetings. And with the real Liam's parents, we were meeting twice a month with the family. So every other week we will have a meeting to discuss what was happening in what happened in the past, what was happening in school, to share his progression and to also share issues that might have happened. Okay? Any questions about the case discussion? Can we carry on?
I would just like to make a comment. I thought it was very interesting what you said. It takes time, because I had a student. He was in elementary, and now this year he just moved to middle school. So he's been with me for 2 years, but all the middle school teachers are new. And it took me 2 years to work on his behavior, for him to actually pay attention and listen to me. And now all of the other teachers are going crazy because they're like, oh, he misbehaves. I was like, well, he's used to me already because it's his third year with me. And then when I tell them it took me 2 years to get him straight, they're like, oh, I don't have the time for that. Oh, it's too much time. So there's also that, like, having the motivation to make a change. I think that's the most important, because sometimes it's very easy to go like, well, it's easier if I just ignore him.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to just label the student with the aggressive one. And
Yeah.
that is what happened in Liam's previous schools, because he had already been to three different schools in the area. And in that schools, labeling him was much easier than trying to understand what's going on. And of course, it takes time. And what is essential during this time, where the development, is ongoing and they are making tiny baby steps of progress. What's important is to communicate to the child the achievements you've been noticing, to communicate with the family and share the achievements and share new challenges, because as something new is achieved, another challenge usually starts to happen. So during this time, it shouldn't be a silent time. It should be a time of rich and live communication with the family, with therapists and other professionals that might work with the child, and mainly, most importantly, communication with the child. So when you see the progress, when we see the change, we should communicate and we should help the child understand how to analyze and his own responses as well. We are going to talk about it further on today, and it's called encouragement. We call it a type of intrinsic motivation to have better attitudes. Okay. And before we go on a break, I brought here a poem for you called The 100 Languages of the Child. Here I wrote the 100 languages of our students, but the original name is The 100 Languages of the Child. This poem was written by a journalist called Loris Malaguzzi. And Loris Malaguzzi, the last half of the past century, he spent in Italy in the schools in Reggio Emilia. I don't know if you've heard of those schools, but they became a reference worldwide in holistic education. So they became a reference by being schools that look at the child as a whole human being, as feelings, mind, brain, heart, hands, physical, and inside an environment interacting with peers. Okay. So I'm going to read the poem for you because the letters are really, really tiny and maybe you are not able to see all of them. So what I just want you to do now, you can close your eyes and I'll read you the poem and try to imagine the poem happening inside your school. So imagine you are inside your school, the place you work at, and as you listen to those words, try to see those things or try to look for them and notice you cannot see them in your workplace, okay? The child is made of 100. The child has 100 languages, 100 hands, 100 thoughts, 100 ways of thinking, of playing, of speaking. 100, always 100 ways of listening, of marveling, of loving. 100 joys for singing and understanding. 100 worlds to discover. 100 worlds to invent. 100 worlds to dream. The child has 100 languages and 100 more. But they still 99. The child is made of 100. The school and the culture separate the head from the body. They tell the child to think without hands, to do without head, to listen and not to speak, to understand without joy, to love and marvel only at Easter and Christmas. They tell the child to discover the world already there. And of the 100, they steal 99. They tell the child that work and play, reality and fantasy, science and imagination, sky and earth, reason and dream are things that do not belong together. And thus they tell the child that the 100 is not there. The child says, "No way, the 100 is there." Okay, have you ever heard this poem before? First time?
Yes.
Okay, so what does it mean to separate the mind from the body? And to think without hands, to do without head, to listen and not to speak, to understand without joy, to love and marvel only at Easter and Christmas. What does it mean for you?
I don't know if it's like literal, like they just have to sit quiet and listen. They're not allowed to speak, or not allowed to move, or not allowed to run around. Because like sometimes some students need some sort of like, you know, stimulation. But technically, they just have to sit there quietly and steady and not move, and just do what they're told to do.
Yeah, so it goes against their impulse, their natural engagement. Sometimes it could go against their natural ways of engaging, right? And so when we say separate the mind from the body, what do you think this means?
At the physical sense to the inner sense, I don't know. I thought of this first. And to think without hands, like when they want to see something, to discover, they are not first, they are first curious, but there's no time for them to notice they are curious because they want to touch it and they want to take it from you. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so this poem is about an educational system that prize the pupils from experiences. And why is this poem here in this course about positive discipline? Because when we when we prive the student of from the experience of experiencing feelings such as frustration, anger, sadness, we are consequently not allowing them to develop those skills inside the situation. So when we see a student is frustrated, we shouldn't just give them a pat on the back and say, ah, okay, that was nothing, but that wasn't even that nice. Ah, but I have something even nicer for you. Instead, we shouldn't separate the mind from the body. We shouldn't do this. We should acknowledge, we should look at that frustration and build skills to deal with the frustration. So look at I see you are frustrated. Why are you frustrated with it? I see. How can you change it? Is there a way to try again? If there isn't a way to try again, what can you do when you have this opportunity in the future, or when you are very angry, and you say something you didn't mean to a friend? It's not just pointing out and say you should apologize to your friend and you should apologize to him or her, but actually asking them, what do you think your words sounded like? If they were spoken to you, how would you have reacted? And doing this, we help them build their social and emotional background. Okay? Right now, girls, we are going to take a 5 minutes break. And when it's 2020, and I'm not sure what time it is for you, Talita, but when it's 8:20 here in Brazil, 8:21 actually, and then we're gonna get back with some practical strategies about it. Okay? All right, girls. I think we are ready to get back from your break. Just let me know if you're there, if you're listening already, so we can start the second part of today's lesson. So, are you there?
I'm just finishing my breakfast, but I can do both if that's
All
okay.
right. Okay.
Because like when I finish the course, I have to immediately go to work, so I don't have much time.
Okay, no worries. Multitasking, right? That's teachers are all about. What about you, Jovan? Are you back? My
Yes, I
friend?
am. I'm here.
Okay, then. So it's the name of our course, Positive Discipline. It's on the name of our course, and you might be still wondering what positive discipline is all about. Okay, and from this module one, as from this module two on, we are going to learn more practical strategies on how to manage our classrooms, fostering social and emotional development. And the approach we are going to use to foster the development of those skills is called the positive discipline approach. Okay, this approach first it started with Alfred Adler's work. He is an Austrian psychiatrist, and he first started to study and write works with Jung and Freud, but then each of them went a separate way on that. And Adler's main field of study were relationships. So he was really interested in understanding how relationships are built, how they are sustained, how they are broken. So he studied all things concerning relationships, and his works led to several of publications on how relationships work, as in couples, in workplaces, and also in schools. And that's why he's here, because we are teachers, we are inside schools, and he was studying the impact of relationships inside schools. He had a student that took over his works after he died, which was Rudolf Drakers. We are going to listen to those names a lot from now on. Rudolf Drakers, he was a teacher himself, beyond being a psychiatrist as well. And he took Adler's work to another level of personification for a school for school environments. So he got all the theories that Adler developed and he translated them into teacher-friendly language. Okay. Nowadays, we have two educators, Professor Jay Nelson and Dr. Lynn Lott. They are the founders of the positive discipline movement. They have been studying and writing and publishing about both Adler and Drakers applied to our times for about the past 30, 40 years. And those authors are the ones that wrote the books that I use to structure our course. So we are also going to listen to their names a lot from now on. We're going to call it the positive discipline stars, because they are going to help us foster the social and emotional development in the classroom. Our target is not to cut feelings. Our target is not to get feelings and bury them deep in the ground so children do not find them and keep working on their booklets and course books. And we want them to succeed in their course books if it's necessary. We want them to succeed in the curriculum and in tests if this is what the school requires. But we won't lose the social and emotional development on the way. So we won't conquer academic excellence um, by letting the social and emotional development behind. That's why we have positive discipline, and that's why we're going to talk about the fundamentals of positive discipline today. A first and very, very important principle of the positive discipline approach is called encouragement. Okay. Rudolf Drakers used to say that a misbehaving child is a discouraged child. So a misbehaving child is discouraged. Discouraged about what? About not behaving well. And this, according to the positive discipline approach, a child that is misbehaving cannot or does not or chooses not to see reasons to behave better, because misbehaving is the most comfortable way. And misbehaving is, as Giovanna mentioned in Liam's case, misbehaving can be a mechanism of protection. Okay? So this is a very interesting quote, because they are not, we will consider that they are not being encouraged to behave better. But what is encouragement? Is it like a praising? Is it like saying, well done, today you said sorry to your friends. Oh, well done, today you didn't yell at the teacher. Oh, wonderful work. I'll give you 5 stars on your diary today because you paid attention and you didn't interrupt my lesson. This is called praising, okay? It's very important for us to set the difference, because praising first communicates the need for external approval. So let's get the case of you didn't interrupt me and I'll give you 5 stars on your diary. So you show your mommy, okay? It communicates the need of external approval. So I am only worth it when my teacher gives me the 5 stars. And the 5 stars are only worth it if I can show them to my mommy and I see a good reaction. So there is a sequence of external reactions that will regulate how important those stars are or how not important they are. Second, praising is adult centered. So praising comes from the adult. You are in a position of superiority and you can provide praise for your student. Therefore, praising can also be judgmental, because whereas you consider that one student didn't interrupt you and got 5 stars on the diary, the other student interrupt you twice, but with a fair reason, and he didn't get any stars on his notebook, or only the one that constantly misbehaves gets the stars, so he feels happy, and the ones that are, constantly behaving well and following the agreements do not get anything. So praising can be judgmental. And most importantly, praising is a communication strategy that only works when everything is okay. Can you imagine how 5 stars on a diary would help you solve a problem if this student is rude to you? If this student interrupts you during your whole lesson? How could those 5 stars on the diary help? They couldn't, right? Because praising only works when everything is okay. And again, who set the difference between what is praising and what is encouragement was Dr. and teacher Rudolf Drakers. And as I told you, that he translated Alfred Adler's works into teacher-friendly language. He also provided us with the definitions of encouragement. So he told us first that a child that is misbehaving is discouraged. Therefore, someone who is discouraged needs encouragement to behave better. And what is this encouragement? Let's stick to the same example, okay? A child who interrupts all the time, and today he didn't interrupt my lesson. The tools that I have are myself. I can communicate, I can talk, and I have 5 stars on my bottom drawer in the classroom that I really would like to put on a diary and send home as praising. But first, I'll stop and think. How can I promote self-regulation? At the end of the lesson or during the lesson when I have a time, I can sit close to that student and ask, I have noticed that you didn't interrupt my speech a single time today, and I would like to thank you because I feel appreciated and I feel that you respect what I'm saying by not interrupting. And how do you feel after this class? So it's student centered. And how do you see your behavior? Do you have any questions? Do you need any help? If you do, you can always talk to me about it. But to interrupt the teacher, to say silly things and things that are not connected to the topic, can be quite disrespectful. But today you showed respect. Encouragement is a type of communication that is not judgmental, it's analytical. So you're going to look at the situation, which is you have been interrupting me for several days in a row, and today you didn't. What motivated you not to interrupt today? What ideas did you have in your what changed your mind to behave this way today? And encouragement will work both ways. When things are okay, for example, this lesson that the student didn't interrupt all the time and let me teach, and I could have this talk with this same questions I described it for you. And when things are not okay, and that lesson that student was really, really excited and really anxious and interrupting the whole time, I could use the very same questions and the very same voice tone to discuss the attitude. Okay? Any questions so far between the difference about the difference between praising and encouragement? No? Okay. But you can interrupt me anytime you want, okay? If you have questions.
All right.
Okay, so when we talk about praising and encouragement, and when we consider that motto that the misbehaving child is a discouraged child, we should look at intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So, what we are aiming by using positive discipline, our target is to develop intrinsic motivators in our students because the intrinsic motivators are the lifelong skills. The skills they are not going to use only today at music class, but they can take to elementary school, they can take to high school when they are with other teachers. They will use what we are teaching now to have a better experience in the future. Okay, some examples of intrinsic motivators could be autonomy, belonging, having the opportunity to be curious, and learning about things you love, achieving mastery and knowing how to recognize when you achieve mastery, and understanding the meaning of things. So, what is this activity for? What are we doing it for? Or what was this object created for? Investigating. Okay, and some of the extrinsic motivators that promote a regulation according to external approval and are not healthy to the social and emotional development are badges, competition, fear of failure, fear of punishment, gold stars, money, points, rewards. So the extrinsic motivation, the behavior is driven by external rewards, as I told you in a previous slide, such as money, fame, grades, being praised by the teacher. And what we aim is to see our students engage in a behavior because it is personally rewarding, it is personally important, not for an external approval or reward. So engaging in a good behavior, for example, in the playground, not kicking and not hurting others, Not because my teacher this year tells me not to and punishes me if I do so, but because my teacher helped me really understand how to express my frustration when I'm playing in the playground, how to express my sense of unfairness when I'm playing a game, when I think that something unfair happened. How can I express this idea of unfairness without aggression? So we are not cutting the emotion. We are not throwing the sense of unfairness and the anxious behavior or the aggressive behavior away, but we are redirecting, and this is what our target should be: to look at the behavior and see room for growth inside that behavior. If the behavior is yelling because of a sense of unfairness in the playground, in games, we should see in this situation room for growth. So when we talk, when we establish a dialogue, what other alternatives can you have beyond being aggressive to express, to make your friends understand why you think the game wasn't fair, to make your teacher understand why the game wasn't fair? And how how can you accept their feedback? Because the game might have had been unfair, or it might not have been unfair. So how can you express that? This is our teaching window. This is our gold moment to develop the social and emotional skills through positive discipline. Okay? Now we're going to take a closer look at the intrinsic motivators. Okay? Being the first of them, meaningfulness. When your student feels that what they are doing is important, and when they feel they are contributing to something with real value, okay? The sense of meaningfulness is not about. Sorry, girls, my dog, super loud. The sense of meaningfulness is not about giving that misbehaving student a silly classroom job or a useless classroom job just because. Like, this little girl is a chit chatter and she's always making funny noises and getting the attention to herself. So I'm gonna keep her busy getting copies from the copy machine all the time. This is a meaningless job, and children are very smart. She is going to realize you are giving her a meaningless job, and this won't help your relationship with her. But as she really likes to communicate, she could be, for example, a note taker. So when you have lessons, or she could be a spokeswoman for the group, or she could check instructions after you give instructions to the class. She could double check with some students that usually struggle in understanding instructions. So if her talent is communicating, she should communicate in a positive way and having a meaningful and important task in the group. Okay, so the sense of meaningfulness is our first source of intrinsic motivation. Okay? The second source is choice. When our students perceive a possibility to influence their work, when they see that there's room for change, there's flexibility in our lessons, there is flexibility in our activities, when our students can connect to feeling of ownership and responsibility of their own work, when they feel that they are actually in charge of it. So let's say they are doing a science project about animal habitats, and one student chose the desert, and you were seeing that they are struggling finding information about the desert habitat, but it's still their project. It's still their group's project. What you can do as a teacher is to give them some flexibility in the deadline, some flexibility of how to visually present the materials, but to have them, to hold them responsible for their choices, okay, and the results of it. The third source of intrinsic motivation is competence. When they feel like they can perform their tasks and they feel proud of the high quality in their tasks. When they can look back at their handwriting, for example, if we're talking about very young learners, 6, 7 year olds in primary, they can look back at their handwriting from 6 months ago and look now at their handwriting and value their progress and recognize their competence. And they won't do it by themselves. They will need our guidance so they see how competent they are, so they see the improvements, so they see how much they have achieved. And this is kind of the same as the third one, but the last source of intrinsic motivation is progress, okay? When they have confidence in the future, that they are doing the right thing, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is hope. And if I make a mistake, I know how to mend it, or I know whom to look at in order to help me mend my mistake. I am being supported. Therefore, I am confident that I will make progress. Okay? Girls, any questions so far about intrinsic motivation?
No.
No.
No? All right. So today's lesson, the title was From Educational Frameworks to the Classroom Reality. We have been talking about classroom situations for the past hour, and now we are gonna look about we're going to take a look at our main educational document, which is the Brazilian BNCC. All right, there are some terms in Portuguese in this lesson. I hope you don't mind because I got them straight from the document, the government document that we currently have in Brazil. I know, Thalita, you do not teach in Brazil, but you can trace a parallel between the documents that you have that regulate the educational system where you are working. Okay, what's important to look at is that regardless of the country you are working at, there is always a framework, there's always an educational framework, something that should be minimally followed by schools and institutions across that given country. Okay, and what's interesting for us to look at as we are developing the positive discipline approach is whether the social and emotional competencies are or are not mentioned in those national guidelines. Okay. In Brazil, we had our main document reviewed many times throughout many years, and this is what we have now. We have 5 big social and emotional competencies, and we have 17 smaller ones that are part of the big ones. Okay, what we are gonna do now, oh, sorry, yeah, so what we are gonna do now is to understand how they can be practically developed. First, they are a classroom growth mindset. It's a mindset that you have as a teacher and that you spread around to your pupils. Okay, they are co-equal to the curriculum. They are as important as your math, literacy, music, art, science curriculum. And we are going to take a look at the 5 R's of applying positive discipline in our classrooms. Okay, so when we want to develop social and emotional competencies, and through the positive discipline approach. First thing we need to do is, before we go into one activity that there's always an issue there, there's always misbehaving there, we should revise the expectation. So I got here an example of a group I had that would always play with the tools in the science lab. So they would get to the science lab, 30 kids at a time, just one teacher, and they would madly play with everything around for the first 15 minutes and make a big mess in the science lab. So, having this big science lab problem, traditionally, I could just make the decision of punishment. So, we won't go to the science lab again. You are not ready. This class won't go. Or I could praise another group that does very well in the science lab and make my students feel smaller and less competent. Okay? And we don't want to do any of those things. Or I could be just very lenient and let them play and play and play and play and play in a science lab and never get to actually teach science in the lab. So we do not want any of those three options. What we want is to develop the social and emotional skill. We want them to build those lifelong skills and to think about their attitudes. And this is where those 5 R's will come. The first R is to revise expectations by questioning. For example, what are we supposed to do in the science lab? And they would answer, oh, miss, we are there to study about science. With this group, and during that project that we had this problem, we were studying about friction. So they knew how to tell me about it. So yeah, I think we go to the science lab because you were trying to show us friction experiments. And then we reflect. How are we currently doing when we go there? Did you ever get to do any friction experiment? Did you ever get to do any experiment that we could see friction, you could write about friction? No. Why not? Didn't we have time? Why couldn't we have enough time? Third R, responsibility. How could you as a group help? It's your responsibility to learn. You are here and you are in charge of your learning. You are entitled to learn. You have the right to learn, but you are also responsible for what's going on. You are a group of kids. Okay? So how could you help? Oh, we could choose one interesting item from the science lab and explore only that one, and then the other day we explore the other one because we are super curious about the science lab and we can't help ourselves. Or we could have the friction experiment first, listen to the teacher, and get the 5 minutes to gently explore the things in the lab without making a mess, without breaking anything. At the end of the lesson, this could be a solution. For VAR, what sort of things can we achieve if we behave that? What evidence will be seen? How can we see that your attitude has changed? How can we keep track of your attitude? And last, repetition. As positive discipline educators, we aim for the growth in the process, not a target in the end. We are not looking for something in the end that we'll just see here and watch happening. We are part of the process with them. Okay? So this is the last thing I was going to talk to you about today. Those 5 practical R's that can guide a conversation when you have an issue, when you have a situation with your class? What if they still don't behave? That's why, G, we have the repetition, because you go back to the beginning, but then with different contributions. So let's say, um, let me start again here, but we are gonna end with, we're not gonna have a happy ending, okay? So we revised the expectations, we reflected about what they had to do, we talked about being responsible, but their results were really bad. The next time we went to the science lab, they made the whole big mess all over again. So, what do? We should go back to revising the expectations and talk to them about the attitudes that were happening that led to that bad result. So, guys, today we had a bad result in the science lab. You had an experiment to do, you couldn't finish the experiment. I noticed you were really interested in the toys and the resources, and you also couldn't play with any of the resources because you were making a big mess and they weren't organized anymore. Plus, the class that came after us got the lab all messy. Those are the results of today's lessons, okay? So this would be the reflection. Awesome. You are responsible for learning, for organizing the lab, and you are also responsible for having fun. You are also responsible for having an enjoyable moment here at school. So, how could you enjoy this moment better? Can you enjoy learning by making a mess? Can you enjoy learning by going to a science lab that is all dirty? Can you enjoy learning when you cannot follow instructions? You get the materials for the experiment and you don't know what to do. How can you enjoy that? And then going there for another lesson and observing the results. Again, that would be the cycle of going back to revising expectations and talking to your group about how to build this competency. Okay? Do you have any questions about it?
No.
No? Was it clear for you? Is it
Yeah.
hard to apply? How do you
It's
feel?
hard. I just feel it's hard because I deal with people information. Okay, so kids are, but I understand that this is a problem of my own. Understanding that I, as an educator, have to respect the development process of the kids' understanding and reflecting on their attitudes, and this is not natural for us that had this kind of educational process. So we experienced some um, external influences, intensive external influences, and then we are now teaching, we are now on the field and learning how to respect each individual one way. So it's just I'm being um, famosa, I don't know.
Stubborn?
Inside
Okay.
myself, yes.
I know. Maybe,
Stubborn.
G, I'm gonna try to give you an example with younger kids, okay? So a problem with that will frequently happen with younger kids is not to share, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Has it ever happened to you?
Yeah, for sure.
Not sharing. So first, we should consider, as you said, their minds are in formation. They are in ongoing development. And if we're talking about a child that is 2, 3 years old, on their brains, they are emotionally attached, irrationally attached to some objects. Okay. So there might be 10 dollies in the classroom, but that one dolly is very special to Mary, and Mary never shares that one dolly. As we are talking about a toddler whose mind is under ongoing development and whose mind is not ready for this abstract concept of sharing everything, what we do as teachers is to set a deal that everyone in this group, so we have 10 kids, and from now on in our group, let's revise the expectations. Everyone will have one special thing. And your precious, I used to call it the precious thing with my group of toddlers when I taught toddlers. And your precious thing is yours. When you are at school, that toy is for you to feel safe and for you to feel happy. But it can only be one. And when someone is with their special thing, their precious thing, we cannot get it because we should respect that friend's moment with the precious thing. So it would be Mary's opportunity to raise her hand and say, Miss, I want to choose the dolly on the red dress. Okay, Mary. So Mary's precious thing is the dolly on the red dress. And as they all have one object that they don't share, we could practice the act of sharing with objects that do not mean as much because they are too young for sharing things that mean as much as that. Because it's not only about the dolly, it's about confidence. It's about a moment that she had that dolly and she was scared. It's about a moment that she had to say goodbye to her mommy, and the first toy she got into from the classroom was that dolly. So it's a whole emotional connection that goes far beyond not sharing. We should practice the sharing skill by reflecting. How are we doing now that you have one precious thing and you have to share? You can share all the Legos, all the blocks, the Play-Doh, the paper, the crayons. We have several other sets of things in the classroom that could be shared. How are you doing in sharing those things? So being more broad. So whereas you are responsible for your precious thing, you are also responsible for sharing the other things because you chose only one to be your precious, which means that all the others can be shared with your friends. And then talking about the results with them. How are you feeling that now you have your dolly with you? And how are you feeling that now you can share the Legos with the other kids? And what I would do, Giovanna, with toddlers when I used to teach toddlers was to rotate the precious things. Because sometimes we have something that is super, super special in a classroom, and it would be unfair if that child would be the only one given the chance to spend precious time with that toy, for example. So every 2 weeks, we would have a circle time all over again and swap precious things. And that became like a routine for our classroom. And it really solved the problem of not sharing because they learned how to share respectfully with items that weren't as strongly connected to their emotions as their precious thing. Did you understand? Was it clear?
For sure.
Yes.
So
Was it
much.
helpful?
A lot, yes.
All right, girls. So that's it for today. Okay. And I left in Google Classroom an article and also an extension for you to read and for us to discuss next Tuesday. Okay.